Okay, once again, thank you, Ms. Blackwelder. Now, Ms. Furtenball, you have questions, comment.
As well, I told Ms. Blackwater during that little break there that she gave a great segue into my proposal. And I'll have you know, I did not come up with this until we were sitting here and I'm listening to everybody and thinking, I know what can help solve that. Anyways, I had already contacted Jason during the week, I guess, once we got the materials, concerned about the medical appointments, at least in our locale here. Doctors' offices tend to close and have shorter hours on Fridays, or sometimes close completely. So I'm a little concerned from that standpoint that Friday is the day. So I actually proposed to them, why not make it Monday or make it Wednesday? To, if you will, give the flexibility, but then you're not waiting 4 days. If a child needs to get to the doctor, 2 days in alternating pockets is a lot easier to manage, which would mean Wednesday is your off day. So I hope you'll look at that, give that further consideration, because I personally know from the standpoint of trying to get doctor's appointments on a Friday repeatedly over the years for children and myself, it's very difficult in this county. And all of a sudden you're putting all your kids there because now they are going to have a slightly longer day. So it may sound nice to have that 3-day weekend, but I think we need to kind of look down through the rationale here. You said, one of y'all made a comment about the minimum 37 hours. So Mrs. Auger, this question is kind of for you. When I multiply their hours, what they're proposing for the teacher day, it comes out to just about 37 hours for the week. What is the minimum hours a person must be at their place of work to be considered full-time? Because teachers, will vary.
Right.
In a normal situation, will leave 10 minutes after the kids leave, or they might stay 2 hours longer.
Right.
But if all of a sudden you have everybody leaving after the kids leave because it gets a little easy to do that, and you don't have as much planning in this environment as you do in a traditional stand-up classroom environment, what kind of
Yeah.
It's 38
what will that
hours
do
a
to
week.
the minimum hours required?
Board policy, correct me if I'm wrong, is 37 and a half hours is the minimum employment for any certified staff. And then all other duties as assigned, or I think the language speaks to until the job is done, basically, because we're certified, not hourly employees. So 37 and a half is the minimum.
That
then
you
they
must be
expect-
on campus?
Yes, that you must be working.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to propose something, and I guess I would just ask you to go back and look at this and see. I've seen this model before. When you have a 4-day week that you alternate, and every other Friday, a portion of the staff, whatever rotation you do, a 2-week, a 3-week, whatever rotation, that you actually cut your teacher's day instead of until 5:15, because I can almost guarantee you nobody's going to be there after 5. And then all of a sudden you're getting below your 37 and a half, when they're starting before 8. So cut your time back to maybe 4:45, and then there's a required rotation, whatever Kevin and Jason would work out, every second or third Friday, whatever 1/3, 1/2, 1/4, whatever number of teachers are there. Then Kevin can be the administrator. There's a couple, I don't know how many staff you have, but there's a couple of teachers there for the students who come in. And maybe there's even students who want to accelerate, or they're getting very close to finishing something. And instead of saying, I didn't make it this semester, you can offer that at your discretion, Kevin, to say, you can come. We have an English teacher here on Friday. I know it's not a regular school day, but if you'd like to make that up, just like you open the house on the holidays, do something like that. So I would rather see not have these really long days, but maybe, like I said, just cut it back about 30 minutes, and the teachers get the rest of their hours, and they serve the purpose of the students as well. So,
Okay.
and then the other question I had is maybe kind of Mrs. Auger as well, is when you have teachers working an unusual schedule, how do you do annual leave, sick time? Is it just by the hours? How do you measure those sorts of things? I think you're going to have to come up. I'm sorry.
That actually is a challenge. At our last cabinet meeting, Ms. Klutz and I said that we were going to talk to Durham and a couple of other counties to be sure that we had that programmed appropriately.
And we are working with Durham to work that out, but it's very similar to the way that we work the 410s in the summer with our current staff. So yes, essentially it is the hourly type leave that we record. So in the summer, when our staff takes a day off, we record 10 hours instead of the 8 hours. So it's essentially the same, but we are working closely with Durham.
But this is only like 9 1/4.
Right.
You know, it's a little different.
So yeah, it would be a little different. So whatever we decide to do, we would work that out accordingly. So essentially, with certified staff, it's a little bit differently. It's half days and whole days, but we would need to tweak it according to whatever plan we implemented.
Okay, thank you.
But we can accommodate it.
Okay. Well, I hope, though, that Jason and Kevin, you'll look at the idea of, I really don't want to see Kevin, the principal, being the instructor on Friday, and I want it to be more welcoming than just go in the room and go ahead and work and I'll be around, you know, because otherwise we're not going to keep the kids on pace.
Right.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. Mr. Furr, you have any comments, questions?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get some of this TV time since my partners are hogging it all up. But no, I like the concept, the Performance Learning Center. I think you guys are doing exactly what it's set up to do, to give the kids alternative ways. And this is just being another creative idea to help all the kids. So you answered, Holly and Cindy had the same concerns as I had, but you guys answered it. But that's it.
Thanks.
Thank you, board members.
Well,
Everybody.
if I may, Mr. Shue, I'm sorry, but I need to tell you, if you think it's hard to get one on Friday, you better try Monday when they've been closed and they're having sick visits. I would highly not suggest on Monday if you decide to change that template.
Thanks.
Well, it's going to require a little tweaking here and there, but for the most part, Kevin, I think it's an excellent, well thought out plan. I think that we will see some of the positive results that you've outlined, and the only real problem that I see is that we got this waiting list, and that's this year, coming up. What we're going to do next year and the year after that. So it's probably opening a door for us here to be looking at an expansion program at some point. And so this here will just give us a good indicator that that's in our near future, board members. And so, but anyway, with that being said, board members are.
One more comment.
Yes.
In that vein, can we get some sort of idea of, now that we're over at J.N. Freeze, of what, I mean, you have a current restrictions because of funding and staff or whatever, but just purely based on space of what you could do, just since you have moved and have more space?
If we stay with the current model like we're doing now, I can add 2 more classrooms easily. But with thinking outside the box and being creative with scheduling, Jason and I have talked about other ideas that in years to come would really be able to enhance the number of students we could come, being creative with the space we have, looking at some flexible scheduling ideas. I know one of the PLCs in Marietta, Georgia, runs a double shift. On that, they run 2 shifts. They have a school that starts in the morning, runs through a typical day. Then they have a school that starts the afternoon and runs into the evening hours. And that enables them to utilize their space more effectively and get more students in the same amount of space. And that's something that Dr. Shepard and I have talked about for a couple years. But it takes time to build that program to get to that point. And that's something that Jason and I have talked about for years to come, because it's gonna take some definite planning to make that work. And if anything that I do, I want to make sure it's done well.
Yeah, and that, I guess that's my point. It's to be proactive. It doesn't mean that we're going to do it or can do it or can afford to do it, but we then have the parameters of what may be available in case we decide that it's something that we want to pursue. So to me, that's just being proactive. So, okay, good. I'm glad to hear that you guys are already thinking along those lines and looking long term.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Carpenter, you have something else?
Yes, just one question. It seems like everybody is in agreement on this. One thing I would like to see, when this is approved, if with approval, I would like to see us get a report back after the first year on how it went and everything after the first year, to see where we are and everything with it. I would like to see that happen.
I think that's an excellent idea, Ms. Carpenter. And in addition to that, we would like to maybe have something written down that would let us know what the bona fide waiting list is. We see here, say, 25, 30, 40, what really is the bona fide list. Somebody's got a piece of paper where they write down when the people call in, and at the end of certain periods of time, they quantitate that and put that into the form of a report, and then we'll have a baseline to go for years forward. But I'm glad, though, that you're thinking ahead, because I can see that this is something that is going to be a forward-moving project. It's benefiting kids. It's keeping kids in school. We're seeing kids, as Ms. Carpenter said earlier, graduate that otherwise probably wouldn't have. And I remember when we did the Performance Learning Center graduations before, how that those kids, man, you would think that they got a college diploma, versus a high school diploma. And so the excitement that it generates and the alternative that it gives them, it's just another area that sets Cabarrus County Schools apart from the rest. And so I thank you for all you do, Kevin. If it's up to the board at this point, can we move forward for the consent agenda on the 18th?
Now, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see it on action because I'd like to get some feedback on it doing some alternate, a slightly shorter 4 days for the teacher than what's proposed, and have some teachers on a rotating basis on Fridays, or whatever the opt day is.
Mr. Blackburn, is that something you can handle? Okay, no problem. All right, we'll put it on the action agenda. Ms. Monroe, if you'll make note for that. Okay, board members, that's it for that. Thank you very much, Mr. Blackburn. All right, now, Jason, we'll move on to the early college, and I believe you're going to have Mark helping you on that.
We have the annual memorandum of agreement between Rowing RCC, the community college, and our early college. Got it. I'm just going to highlight the changes for everybody instead of going through this. So if you have it pulled up there on your screen, first change that you'll notice is in 1.4. And that was changed from 90 days to 120 days. That change is in our favor. Gives us a little more security for any termination of the agreement. And if you skip to item number 3, all of the tuition and operational costs, just remind the board that all of these costs are already budgeted. They do have funding. Originally it started with the grant funding. Now it's a line item from the state. So anytime it says Cabarrus County will pay for this, this, or this, it's already been budgeted. It's in the plan. It's not new expenses by any means. 3.2 was a change in that we are asking RCC, once they publish their textbook list, to kind of stick to that list, because once they publish that list, we purchase the textbooks for our students, and sometimes professors like to change their mind at the last minute and go with a new textbook. But we basically have asked them, you publish the list, can our students keep the textbook we bought? And they've agreed to that. So they will be using the textbook that they said they were going to use from the beginning. So that's 3.2 change. 3.5, part of the funding pays for a liaison at RCC. However, that's an RCCC employee, subject to their pay raises and their contracts and their negotiations. So to protect Cabarrus County Schools from any of those negotiations, which we don't make, we are just going to limit that to a lump sum, a finite number. And so if they want to incrementally raise salaries or renegotiate contracts on their end, that extra cost will be incurred by RCCC and not by Cabarrus County Schools. In 4.2, we are adding a new classroom. They're giving us a new classroom to add to the classrooms we already have. That'll be a shared space. There is a cost there from technology standpoint to make sure that it has wireless access, and that has been budgeted for. And that is it. Again, this is an annual agreement, so we do this every year. Any questions from the board?
Thank you, Jason. Mark, you have any extra comments, questions, anything?
No, I think Jason's done a good job summarizing the changes, which I reviewed, so I'll be happy to answer questions too. But
Thank you, Mark. Board members, anybody have any questions? And we'll start on Ms. Minnett's side. Questions on this? Okay, Ms. Carpenter?
I have none.
Mr. Kiger?
I'm good.
Ms. Blackwelder? Ms. Burtonbaugh?
Of course, I have to have one. In 7.1, the designated classroom and office facilities, I'm not sure how to read this. And Jason, just for future, if the board could get a red line copy when there's changes, because that's really helpful to hone in on, oh, that was okay last year, but that's new this year. does that imply that the designated classroom and office facilities could be used outside of 7:30 to 5 Monday through Friday for other purposes? The way I read it?
Could be used by them. Could be used by the
Sure.
community college.
Community college or whatever
Or
else they
community
deem. The way I read that,
Right.
it says they're providing space for this
I think-
period of time.
I think that's right. I think if they wanted to have evening classes in those classrooms, that they could
And
do that.
And that is true. In fact, when I was there this morning with Vance, there was a classroom in one of our because the kids are gone now, right? So they're on vacation, and there was a class going on in one of the classrooms.
Okay. Since we have our equipment there,
Mm-hmm.
including technology equipment, what precautions do we take? Maybe Dr. Probst, this is for you. What precautions do we take that technology equipment cannot be used by other people who may be in? Is it shut down every night? I mean, is there a protocol that's occurring? And I'm thinking even
trying
just
to
from the
read-
security,
yeah.
one, the security of the device. Are they
Sure.
locked down to the tables or whatever? And the second thing is the actual logical security that no one else can log on.
We actually collect all the netbooks, and we have all those, and we're in the process of re-imaging them, and everything in our closet is locked.
Yeah, but this is you're not collecting them every night or whatever, because this says.
Oh, you're talking about during the year. I thought you were talking about the summer. I'm sorry.
The way this reads is they're providing the space 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And so at additional times, they could be, Roe and Cabarrus could be using it, but we have a lot of equipment and maybe confidential data in there. And so what are we doing to make sure all of that's secure?
They have very few desktops. Those are only in the office area that RCC does not use. In the classrooms, both the teachers and the students have laptops, and in this one-to-one program, they are allowed to take them home. They do not leave them there. So
Okay.
there's no equipment available out to the public. And then our closet with the servers in it locked down.
Okay.
I can get a sense too from Vance of what kind of standard operating procedures are there for shutdown, lockdown.
Yeah, that would be good. That just
yeah.
struck me odd, Mark, when I read that and thinking, I
And-
thought
and-
this was kind of our designated space, but then the way that's worded, it sounds like it is used, so.
I'll get back to you from Vance on that. Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. Mr. Furr, you have questions? Okay, thank you, Jason. Board members, do we have a nod of the head for consent agenda on the 18th, or do you want it on action for any particular reason? Okay, all right, so we're good for consent agenda on the 18th. Thank you, Jason. All right, we're going to move forward now to 5.6 with Mr. Wiki. As a matter of fact, he'll be doing 5.6, 7, and 8, and we'll just do one at a time, Mr. Wiki, when you're getting ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First project that we'll be talking about is a request to move funds from Mount Pleasant Elementary School, the chillers and control replacement project, to Central Cabarrus High School's chiller control tower and controls replacement project. And basically, the purpose of this, there were some things that we became aware of after the bidding was completed on on the project at Central Cabarrus High School. And, well, kind of two things that happened. One was we realized that there was the need for a platform and ladder to get access to the cooling tower because of the placement of that unit at that particular school. That was not the case at other schools. And then, in addition, we looked at a new treatment process that does not involve chemicals. And if you're aware of the treatment, chemical treatment for cooling towers, it's, one, it uses a great deal of chemicals, and two, they're fairly caustic materials. So the idea was that if there's technology out there, we should take a look at it. And it turns out that for a controllable amount of additional cost, we can move to a water purification system that uses filters rather than chemicals, and thus eliminate having those kind of chemicals in place and having the necessary requirement of changing those chemicals out, on a periodic basis. So that's the reason for the additional cost. The monies were available at Mount Pleasant, which came in substantially below budget. And as a result, we're suggesting that we move, there's $19,000 in Central Cabarrus chiller project. We need an additional $8,500 to cover the total additional cost of $27,500. And we ask your approval of that request.
Thank you, Mr. Wickey. Before we move to the board, I just, obviously, because I did water treatment purification for close to 20 years, I'm just curious as to what type purification system we're using here and what the anticipated costs are. I know that descaling chemicals and all that for chemical treatment, they are very expensive, but we used to compete all the time between filtering versus chemical. And a lot of times, there was very little difference in the two, and that's why we didn't get many of those jobs for that reason. So I'm just curious, what type water purification system were we using?
I don't have the name of it, to be honest with you. We do have that information back at the office. I can tell you.
Is it something like reverse osmosis, deionization, that type thing?
I believe it is along those lines. I would, I guess, like to come back with that information for you, Mr.
I'd
Chairman.
be curious just to find out,
Sure.
Because, like I say, there was always that competition that we had.
I will say that this is an attempt to go green. It's an attempt to have a safer environment within the school, and certainly because of the offing of material into the atmosphere, the use of this water purification system is a greener, if you will, or more environmentally friendly process.
I'm sure there's been a lot of progress since I've been in the water treatment business, so I would be curious for you to get that back to us.
Absolutely.
Okay, board members, do you have any questions on this item here where we're going to reallocate these funds?
You can get us a cost breakdown.
Yeah,
It compared the difference.
the filters versus the chemicals, that kind of thing, ongoing, and, and the water consumption rate, which always comes into effect. I know that the cooling towers require a lot of water, and depending on what type of water it is, but I believe we've got municipal water supply at these facilities, so that's
Yes, we
not
do.
such a big problem there, whereas it was, sometimes we had wells to deal with where the minerals and all that would just build up, and it was a big problem. Scaling was a big problem, but I realize that it is too with municipal water, more so now than it has been in years past. But anyway, board members, do we have any questions? Starting on Mr. Furr's? Yeah, we'll start with Mr. Furr's side, and if you have questions, reference this reallocation, now's the time to speak. Mr. Furr don't have no questions? All right, how about Ms. Furtenbaugh? No questions. Ms. Blackwelder?
I just have a question. How did they miss the platform and the ladder? Was that on the design phase, or, I'm kind of curious how that was missed. Do you know, Lynn?
And as I say, this is, and the reality is, we had an engineer who fell and literally broke both kneecaps. When that happened, another person came in to try and take on the job, and he was working on 3 projects at one time. The assumption was on his part that all 3 were similar. In this case, I think it was that this was a little bit different than the other 2 projects. The other 2 are more internal projects. This one was a more separated project, with the tower being more distant from the rest of the equipment. And I think that's a simple answer to your question. We had a change of leadership, if you will, on the design side, and it got missed.
How would they have had access to it if they didn't have something in there for that? Well, as far as from a safety point of view.
No, you're right. We'd have to literally bring something to that
Yeah.
location.
And that would have been an inspection issue as well on the end.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And I think that, on the defense of what happens on design issues like this where something gets missed, the owner is still responsible for the cost. There might be an incremental increase in cost based on what you're paying for, because it's a change order item, but the reality is you didn't have it in the first place, so you didn't pay for it in the initial bid, hence you now pay something for it today, but it's simply going to be, I'm sure, somewhat more costly because it's a change
Right.
order.
Oh, I agree. I just wondered how they would have had access to it
Oh,
to
no,
begin
it-
with. That's not a good omission. So.
No, I agree, and
Okay.
it's unfortunate that it happened, but like I say, it was in very unusual circumstances. This gentleman was on a job site, he fell, and he literally broke both knees at the same time, so he was in tough shape, could not work, and we had to have a transition of people, and something got dropped, I think, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwelder. Mr. Kiger?
Just briefly, do we have, evidence or documentation that the green solution is viable and works, and how long has it been around? Or is it somebody
we-
that's marketing something as green and to kind of catch the fever?
No, we actually toured, not me, but a couple of our folks who are in the business of HVAC equipment for us, toured another district, I believe up in Catawba County, and looked at this system in place and talked to the ownership there and felt that it was really a worthwhile investment.
So just in your background experience, you're comfortable with with that particular system?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, based on what my staff is telling me. Correct.
Okay, perfect. The other project that we're taking the money from, and I think you said this, has been done, completed, and this is left over. This is not something we've chosen to move or not do. It's just happens to be an extra amount of money left over from that project.
Yes, there was an inordinate amount of money left, a couple $100,000 as I recall. And so, no, that project is under construction right now. It's
Okay.
going well, and no reason that we can't take the money at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Carpenter?
Well, I had already
Okay.
answered mine.
Okay, yeah, and we'll definitely get that back, okay, and Ms. Bonnet? No. Okay, then, so, do we have a consensus of the board that we'll move this on the 18th to the consent agenda? I wouldn't want to hold it up for my comments. I would like to see that information, though, Mr. Wiki. Everybody good for it? Okay, good for the 18th on the consent agenda?
Thank you
All right,
very
we'll move on now to 5.7, the electrical panel safety.
Yes, this is the one that always throws me because I don't have anything other than what you're looking at, and I apologize. We are in the process of bidding this project. We will bid it on next Monday, the 11th, and so we will have real numbers for you at that time instead of blank spaces, and I apologize for that. We just couldn't get it done, but clearly it's the work that we would like to get accomplished this summer, so it's important that we have it before you at the next meeting. So with your indulgence, we'll bring those numbers before you at the business meeting.
Okay,
Once we bid
Mr.
it.
Wiki, that sounds fine. I would recommend we move this to the action agenda for the 18th. Is that okay with the board members? Okay, action agenda, Ms. Monroe, on 5.07. All right, now we'll move on to 5.08, the reallocation on some more funds.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The first, I'm telling you, it's like magic up here. The first request, as both of these items are under Concord High School, and the first project request for movement of funds is to move $85,000 from, again, the chiller cooling tower and building controls project, which came in again, as you see, under budget significantly, and move those monies to the dining room facility. The reason we're bringing it in at this time is that we have been struggling with DPI about whether or not this was permissible. Originally, the guidelines spoke specifically against not having furniture as part of these projects. A final ruling from DPI very recently was that as long as bond counsel for each county that wants to do this agrees with the proposal, then DPI is basically stepping away from it and saying it's not our decision, it's the county's decision. So I worked with Mrs. Dubois at the county. She worked with bond counsel. We actually have it in writing that as long as it's an integral part of a project, in other words, if we're doing a dining room, the dining room furniture is quite acceptable, but we can't go beyond that and suddenly buy office furniture or gymnasium equipment or whatever. It has to be specifically for that project, and they are fine with that idea. So that is the reason it's being brought in now. It's critical that we get an approval because in order to get this equipment purchased, well, actually bid and purchased and delivered in time, we have to move very quickly. So we request that the funds be allocated as shown so that we can move forward on the project.
Okay, board members, do you have any questions to Mr. Whitkey on this item?
That's changing. I'm sorry.
No
We had a
questions for
sidebar.
Mr. Whitkey, I don't think.
Okay.
I'm not hearing any questions from Mr. Whitkey. Okay.
There was an issue, that's what Mrs. Skelly asked, was originally The county was talking about not having this particular request before them until July. In meeting with the county commissioners this afternoon, they agreed to make a special exception and put this on their business meeting agenda later this month.
That'll be on the 18th.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
that sounds fine. All right, now, do you have the other one here for the 42,000?
Yes.
Okay.
This, again, is moving money from the same project that we just spoke of at Concord High School, the cooling tower chiller and building controls project, to spend $42,000 in additional monies for the wireless technology for the school. And basically, the reason that we need that money, we did actually do a project at the high school, but it was one of the very first ones that we bid. And in working with Dr. Probst, we really weren't extremely comfortable at that point in time because we didn't know how they were going to come in. We thought they might come in high because technology at that point was coming in very pricey on other things that we were doing. So we thought, well, let's be conservative and bid half of the access points and the cabling and see where we come out. In retrospect, I guess if you asked Kelly and I now, we probably would have said, well, we probably should have taken an ad alternate for that work, but we didn't do that. And so in this case, we're simply adding the rest of the access points in the building and the cabling, fiber and cabling, to address the entire teaching areas, all of the teaching areas of the school. So it'll be equal to all of the other schools that we're working in. And it will, this is an estimate, but we believe it'll be about $42,000 to accomplish that task. And we request that you allow us to do that.
Okay, Mr. Wiki, I personally see no issues with this. Do board members have any comments, questions, concerns?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. With the expansion of the dining room, that would seem to be a large, almost learning space or evening activity space. Will there be wireless available in the whole new dining room?
Yes, when we worked on this in the fall, we did the 4 core academic areas, and now we'll be going back doing the media center, the dining room, and the second story, which includes most of the CTE classrooms.
Okay, so are they incorporating, right now these are 2 different bids. There's the dining room expansion, then there's the wireless technology. Have they incorporated that together so that as they're doing the dining room work, they've put in the conduit, whatever they need to do, the wiring and whatnot, to provide for that?
I'm fairly certain we have the points located. I don't know to what degree we've actually done that cabling work yet. I believe that work is complete, so I'm going to say more than likely yes, but let me verify with our folks on site that it has been accomplished.
Okay, I'd just like to see it integrated so they're not having
sure.
to retrace their steps, before ceilings or drop ceilings are put in or whatever else happens. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Furtenbaum. Are there any other questions, comments, concerns? Everybody good for the consent agenda on 5.8? Okay, Mr. Whitkey, we'll move on to 6.18 for consent agenda. And Ms. Monroe, you got that noted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Mr. Whitkey. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're down to 6.0, which is time for us to convene in closed session. This will be pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A6 to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective public officer or employee, or to bear or investigate a complaint, charge, or grievance by or against an individual public officer or employee, and pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged, and pursuant to the General Statute 318.11A2 to prevent the premature disclosure of an honorary degree, scholarship, prize, or similar award. Do I have a motion that we convene in closed session?
So moved.
Okay, all those say ayes in favor? Aye. Okay. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you back on the 18th.